The world really isn't quite like the news media often portrays it. They often, as Paul Shoemaker talked about, our U-shaped world. A lot of that is a construct of the media. That's my opinion. But it's not necessarily the reality. A lot of us do reside in the middle on a lot of these issues, and that's what we have in common. So whether you work for the private sector or for government or for the not-for-profit sector or academia or the arts communities, it's amazing how many common values that we share. So that's what we want to focus on. We're going to talk this session about a program that came out in 2015 by the United Nations called the Sustainable Development Goals. Shorthand is SDGs. And the SDGs were part of a resolution that was adopted by 193 countries in September of 2015. It's part of the resolution was entitled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. What that resolution had inside it was a set of goals called the Sustainable Development Goals. And these goals cover all the key issues that fall under that broad banner of sustainable development. So it's everything from addressing poverty and hunger, nutrition, all the way through to things like gender equality, access to clean water and sanitation, continue on to things like making sure that we protect and take care of biodiversity, habitat, dealing with climate change, economic development, healthy economic development, you name it. It's what the United Nations did from 2012 to 2013 is they traveled the world. They had several teams go out for all different backgrounds, and their mission was to identify what are the common challenges that the world faces, no matter which country you're in. These challenges tend to exist. It was an ambitious mission for them to take this on, and what they concluded was that there were 17, I don't have 17 fingers, but you know what I mean, 17 specific areas where what they heard was that we have major challenges lying ahead of us, and if we don't take actions soon, we're going to have a crisis in these areas. Now, it may not be equally shared around the world. Some countries may feel certain things worse than others, but when you add it all together, all of us have an opportunity to help stave off those crises. So they set some goals, and the goals are, as I'd mentioned, taking action on climate change, getting climate change under control, getting programs in place to address poverty, making sure that everybody has access to good health care, making sure everybody has access to quality education. The other thing that so anyway, in September when it was adopted by all the countries, Canada was one of the signatories. So the Canadian government since then has been working away in developing a omnibus kind of program that addresses all those issues. They're trying to set up mechanisms to work with the provinces, because the provinces, of course, have constitutional authority over things like healthcare and education. So there's a lot of discussion going back and forth there. But the United Nations was very, very clearly pointed out that these issues are not government problems. Yeah, the government certainly has to play a role, but these issues transcend government capability. To really get action and success on these goals, we have to engage the private sector. we have to engage the not-for-profit sector. We have to engage academia. We have to bring them in to collaborate, to identify the best ways forward that addresses all the concerns and issues of different stakeholder groups. So what we're going to hear from today is two speakers from the private sector, and they're going to talk about what their organizations have been doing with respect to the Sustainable Development Goals. And just as a little bit of background, most of you are probably familiar. Well, let me ask you, how many people here work in the private sector? Okay, so few, okay. Most large companies certainly now will have something that looks like what they call a sustainability program, corporate sustainability. So it's those departments within the companies that deal with environmental issues, community issues, health and safety very frequently, things that are not necessarily measured financially. They're measured by other things, other metrics. But those are the issues that often become the lightning rod for organizations if they get it wrong, they end up in the media. So these types of issues have risen to the surface as risk areas for a lot of companies. But some smart companies have seen these have seen beyond the risk, and they see these as opportunities. The SDGs came along in 2015, and a lot of these same leading companies looked at the SDGs and said, aha, now here's an opportunity for us to actually collaborate, partner, take positive action as part of a large collective movement that's global. So rather than the way some companies often get portrayed in the media or the popular press as being part of the problem, some companies have seen this as an opportunity to be part of the solution. So we're going to hear from two speakers today that are going to talk about their experience, the path that they're on in the broad sustainability sphere, but they're going to talk also specifically around how they are supporting the achievement of these goals. So one last question before I introduce the first speaker. The Sustainable Development Goals, as I mentioned, they've been around since September of 2015. How many people in the room here are familiar with them? Oh, awesome, great. Most of you are. Because I talk about the SDGs quite frequently, and a lot of times most people aren't familiar with them, which always is a little bit surprising now that we're 4 years into the goals. So this is great. For those of you that are less familiar with the SDGs, this may sound counterintuitive, but if you have a laptop or if you have an iPhone with you, if you feel like Googling the Sustainable Development Goals, feel free to do so. There's a lot of good information online, and it may help you stay tuned into what the speakers are talking about if they're using some of the terminology from the SDG world. The best source of information about the Sustainable Development Goals is actually the United Nations itself. They have several dedicated web pages with lots of information about the goals and how we are doing as a planet to try and achieve these goals by 2030. So I won't make a fuss if you are looking at your screen. Feel free to do so. The only thing I'd ask is if you have a phone, please turn your ringer off. Put it on vibrate. So our first speaker is Yvonne Jeffrey. She's here. She's with Vermilion Energy, a Calgary-based company. And Yvonne has been to the Soul of the Next Economy Forum for several years now. I think you and I first met at one of these sessions, I think. So today she's going to talk to you about her experience with Vermilion Energy. So can you welcome Yvonne Jeffrey. Okay, I'm going to give you the microphone. just put it on your lapel. There you go.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to be very informal here. Mel has asked me to introduce myself, so I am head of sustainability at Vermilion Energy. I have been there since 2013. I have a fairly varied career. I would not say it's a linear trajectory by any means. So I started out in the Army, spent 10 years in the Canadian Army. Was all around the world, including Shiloh, Manitoba, and I know that's really, really exotic. But did spend a peacekeeping tour in Cambodia, so have been involved in community engagement and what we would consider sustainability issues for my entire career. And there were some pretty foundational experiences out there. So spent a lot of time really focusing on communications. I worked with the Calgary Police Service as well as a volunteer. Again, really focused on community engagement and what we could be doing differently. So when I came to Vermilion, it was in that context. It was in the context of community engagement and community investment. And when I got there, I discovered that we were doing some pretty cool things, if I do say so myself, around the world. And what was interesting was that Vermilion is kind of a quiet oil and gas company. It doesn't do a ton of external communication. We mostly have communication focused on investor relations. But what's happened over the years is that we realized that, number one, we had some really good stories to tell. And number two, investors and communities and governments and our regulators were increasingly asking us to tell those stories, that they actually wanted to know what we were doing. And they wanted a sense of reassurance in part that we were treating the environment, treating our people, and treating our communities with respect and just really properly. So we operate we're headquartered here in Calgary, as Mel said. We operate in North America, so in Canada and the US, and also in Europe, and in Australia. So I would say that North America is probably about 50% of our operations. We're conventional oil and gas for the most part. We're not involved in the oil sands, but that's primarily because what we do as a company is we take over very mature oil and gas fields, and what we have expertise in is workovers and making an optimization. So what we do is we make those older assets really effective, and we enable the oil and gas to be recovered for a lot longer. So we think that particular approach is actually helping, because it doesn't mean that as many new assets need to be explored or produced if we can make the best use out of what we have, the existing infrastructure. So we started sustainability reporting. That was me. In 2014, and what happened was I was finishing up a certificate program in corporate social responsibility at the time, and I thought a great capstone project would be the business case for sustainability reporting, and I guess I did a fairly good job. So they asked me to see if I could put something into place in a fairly short period of time, which is what we did. So what happened though is, and it's really interesting, over the last few years there's been a really significant change. We were one of the first intermediate groups in Calgary that was reporting under CSR or sustainability banner. And at the time it was all about talking about the impacts we were having on our external stakeholders. So primarily our communities at that time, and certainly the environment. And it was really about transparency. It was about the reporting, and that was what the focus was. In the last couple of years, that focus has significantly changed. So the focus now is very much on performance. So the reporting is great, but if you're not performing as well, it's not enough. So you have to show where your performance is. It's also become about the external stakeholder impact on you as an organization. And so no matter what you're doing in this room, whether you're working on the corporate side, in the private sector, working in the nonprofit side, working in academia, or in fact government, what's really important is to think about how all of your stakeholders actually impact you and your performance as a company. The sea change has happened probably as a result of the task force on climate-related financial disclosures. And that's very much investor focused, but it has changed the tenor of the conversation completely externally. So that was chaired by Michael Bloomberg a couple of years ago. And what he very smartly did was he brought all of his stakeholders together, so the banking community, the financial community, the investment community, and said to them, what do you need to see from corporations? And the task force came out with a number of recommendations specifically around climate. So as an oil and gas company, obviously climate is pretty material for us. So what we did was we kind of saw this coming, so we established integrated sustainability as one of 6 business objectives a couple of years ago, and we did that very, very purposefully. And in 2015, when the SDGs came out, we started taking a very close look at the SDGs because there are there are multitudes of different reporting frameworks out there if you're a private company, if you're a corporation, and the reporting can be very onerous, it can be very dry, and it can be very data driven. The SDGs came to us from the UN in an incredibly colorful way. So we've got great multicolored icons. We've got a lot of communication from the UN that really focuses on what we want the world to see in 2030. So this is not so much now about what we do want or do not want to do as a company. This is about what we want to be part of in order to see the planet that we want in what is now effectively 10 years time. So we took a look at it and we thought, you know, this is great, but we have all of these things working differently. And you're going to hear a lot of these words over the next couple of days at Seoul. So you hear a lot now about purpose. What is your purpose as an organization? What is your social purpose? There's a concept that we like. It's called creating shared value. And that was made popular by Mark Kramer and Michael Porter out of Harvard Business School. And they've now got a very robust shared value foundation operating. You can Google that as well, I don't mind. So that really talks about how you create value as an organization, in our case as a company, but you share that value with the community. So you're not just operating for yourself, you're also operating for the community. The trick with creating shared value is that it makes you stronger as a company. So it makes your community stronger, makes your company stronger. The SDGs really fall into that category. That's what we see, because we actually see that the SDGs are working. We assessed our own operations and found that we had impacts on all of the 17 SDGs, and we went, okay, well, that's great, but you need to be able to focus a little bit as well. So we focused on certain of the SDGs that we felt we had a larger impact on, but you can't focus on one SDG, because what happens accidentally is that you impact other SDGs. So then you've got things as a company. You've got the task force on climate-related financial disclosure, and that task force is encouraging you as a company to govern yourself and create strategy in a certain way, especially around climate change. So we looked at the task force recommendations and went, well, they're great for climate change, but we also see them working for the whole of our sustainability program, the whole of our company. As a result of a lot of investor requests, because quite frankly, corporate reporting right now is a little bit like the Wild West. Everyone's doing it in just their own way. So the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board is just starting to come out. They came out with their framework last year. And they said, all right, so if you're reporting, especially on climate, these are the material issues if you are, for example, in the oil and gas sector. So they're very much working with the task force. So that sort of gives you a structure for your reporting. and if you're looking at sort of the whole global environment in which you operate, you're looking at the Global Reporting Initiative as the framework that you want to use to report out. So you've got all of these things, and they're all working at the same time, and it can be quite confusing. So I thought, we often talk about the SDGs in isolation and say, well, what's your SDG strategy, or how do you embed the SDGs into your organization, into your business strategy? I thought, well, it kind of is organic, and it's organic because you're doing all of these things at the same time. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just run you through very quickly what we're doing. So this is what we are very focused on from a climate perspective. We believe that we're part of the low carbon transition, the energy transition, that we cannot be a responsible energy producer if we're not part of that. So we really focus on reducing the negative impacts of our traditional oil and gas production, increasing the positive impacts of that while developing renewable energy projects, mostly geothermal, that are really closely related to our core competencies. And you would think that, you know, in terms of our geoscience people and our drilling guys, they really know what is underneath the ground. So when you're thinking about geothermal energy, they're well placed to leverage that. These are some of the key SDGs that we contribute to, especially when it comes to climate and our core production. So here's what happened in France. It doesn't make a lot of sense, perhaps, that I'm talking about tomatoes, and if you've heard me talk about Vermilion before, you know about the tomatoes. So I promise I'll just go through this really quickly. But what happened was, in the mid-2000s, we had the mayor of a community called Parentis, very close to one of our operations, come to see us, and he said, I know that you are looking to partner with the community. I know that you are looking to increase the value of your presence in the community. I have these 4 agricultural engineers. They want to be a co-op. They want to grow tomatoes locally, but they can't do it economically because although we're in the southwest of France, we are not close to the Mediterranean. And the tomato growers closer to the Mediterranean don't have to heat their greenhouses. These guys will have to heat their greenhouses. So our guy said, well, that's interesting because we have geothermal heat that is completely free. So what happens is our oil at Parentis comes out of the ground with a whole schwack of water that normally we just send back into the reservoir as a standard procedure to keep the pressures up. That water happens to be geothermally heated to about, I think in Parentis, that location, it's about 65 degrees, 70 degrees. It's not enough to create electrical power, but it is enough to do heat exchange. So instead of just putting it down back into the reservoir now, we run it past heat exchangers. And that greenhouse, I was lucky enough to, after writing about this greenhouse for probably about 6 years, I finally was able to step into it, fully suited and booted so that I didn't contaminate anything this summer. This is a massive greenhouse. It's probably the entire size of the building that we're in, so Ambrose, it's massive. The fact that we are heating that greenhouse means that they don't have a cost, but they also are able to maintain the humidity in the greenhouse so that they can produce without using pesticides, which is pretty critical for them. So we're now up to 250 jobs. We're avoiding 10,000 tons of greenhouse gas a year there. But something funny happened that we weren't expecting. And that's that once that one greenhouse was situated there, all of a sudden there were jobs there. People were beginning to explore careers in the agricultural sector that didn't exist before, and other vegetable growers started to congregate in that area. So that, I think the whole sector now there is about 500 jobs and counting. And we have absolutely nothing to do with those extra folks. But they are all heating their greenhouses in different ways that do not require fossil fuels. So they're using biomass, they're using geothermal, they're using a lot of solar. So it's kind of a cool story. What's happened, so we did this well before the SDGs, well before, you know, creating shared value became as big as it is. We just thought that it made economic sense. So, but what has happened more recently is that we've had the opportunity to become a lot more strategic about it. So we've said, this is working really well in Parentis. It's been good for the community. It's great for us because it makes use of a what used to be a waste product for us. So when another local community approached us very much more recently to do something similar with an eco-neighborhood that they were building, we said, sure, we'll sign on for that. So that's actually the eco-neighborhood. So basically apartments and townhouses. We're supplying probably about 80% of the heat for 450 homes. 30% of those homes are social housing in France. So we also feel that we're contributing to SDG 1, which is no poverty. And we're currently partnering, we're developing the heat required for a second community just south of Paris, which is going to be 900 homes. So we're really excited about this. But if you look at what we were talking about at the beginning, where all of these different organizations and all of these different reporting groups and strategy groups are trying to work together, you kind of go, okay, so there's a lot of players here. Like, you know, where on earth do you actually put them all? So when I thought about this, we thought, okay, if you're a company, you have to understand what your purpose is. The SDGs are completely aligned with your purpose. You should be able to really look at the SDGs, those 17 different icons, and some of them will just jump out at you immediately. You will know what your organization is about. So when you focus, before you get to strategy, when you focus on what's really important to you as part of this, you can use things like the Global Reporting Initiative, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and the SDGs as a way to guide you through where you need to focus your efforts. Strategy, creating shared values, fabulous. The task force is also good. It will also guide you if one of your main issues is climate. The task force is a great one. And then when you're reporting, you can use all of these. But you'll see where the SDGs are. They're not just in one area. They're here, they're in reporting. You can also put them as part of shared value as part of your strategy. So what I'm trying to say is that the SDGs never stand alone. They never need to be something that you just plunk on top of the company. They can actually be seriously embedded in the company or the organization right from the word go. And that's what this looks like for us. So our foundation, our purpose is to deliver responsibly produced energy for the world's evolving needs. And we understand that the world is evolving. We understand that those needs are changing. So that's where we start. These are the SDGs that are particularly important for that. And you'll see that SDG 17 is something that we talk about all the time, and that's the SDG that focuses on partnerships. We do not believe in any sense of the word that we can do any of this alone. So you'll see that what I talked about was partnerships. So we're partnering with a local co-op. We're partnering with other companies. We're partnering with the public sector. So I'm a big believer in what Paul was saying in his keynote, that we can't do this without public sector support, but we also think that we have a serious role to play as a company in supporting the public sector and supporting the local economies. So for us, materiality, this kind of boils it down a little bit. Climate change, obviously really important. We've made community investment an integral way that the company operates, and collaboration. Our strategy is to use shared value. We do use the task force recommendations. You'll see that in our external regulatory reporting a lot. And that is actually how we report. We use the Global Reporting Initiative as a foundation. We put the task force recommendations on top of that. We make sure that we're reporting the metrics from the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. We're working on that very hard right now to try and align all of our data with what we call SASB. And then the SDGs, you'll see in our sustainability reporting that the SDGs are throughout the report because we want to make sure that we're showing where the impact is. So anyway, that's why the SDGs never stand alone. They can't stand alone on their own, even as the individual icons, because like I said, you can't help but impact more than just one at a time. But as well, the SDGs don't stand alone as something within the company. They start with purpose and they go all the way through, right through strategy, performance, and reporting. There you go. Oh, sorry, Mel, I'm done.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So what we're doing this year with our breakout sessions is for each speaker, such as we'd like you just to we're going to take a minute to reflect on what you just heard and align Yvonne's story with the two questions that that Paul Shoemaker and Barb Higgins talked about this morning, which is uncertainty. What makes you feel uncertain, and what makes you curious? So, based on Yvonne's description of what's happening at Vermilion, I'll ask you to think about, maybe jot down a question or two. We're going to have a time for question and answer at the end, but maybe you'll have a question or something that she said that makes you uncertain. I'm not sure how that would work. Or curious. Have you thought about doing such and such? So take a minute, and then our next speaker is going to join us.
That's great. Yeah.
Now I'm going to turn off these lights just so they can stay a little bit. That's better.
Okay, so I'd like to, just going to do a very brief introduction, and I'm going to let Aaron fill in the details, but our next speaker is Aaron Woodrow, who is the Manager of Environment and Sustainability at Finning. For those of you who are, if you've ever driven around Western Canada, for example, and you come to a construction site and you see lots of heavy equipment, those big yellow Caterpillar vehicles you see, that's Finning. Finning is the Canadian, actually one of the big global distributors for Caterpillar products. So they sales and service, and they are involved in many industries as a part of the supply chain. So with that, I'll ask Erin to come up and say a few more words about her background, and then she'll be talking about what's going on today. So, Erin Woodrow.
Thank you, Mel. I am super happy to be here. So before I tell you a little bit more about myself, I'm going to talk a little bit about Finning. Finning is, as Mel mentioned, the world's largest dealer of Caterpillar equipment. We operate in 7 different countries and have over 200 locations. We do about $7 billion of revenue a year, and that's divided between the selling of this big yellow equipment and then also the service and product support supporting Caterpillar equipment. So that's Finning. Our purpose is to build and power a better world. So ultimately, Finning is a people company. We know that our people are our most valuable asset. They are the people who sell and service our equipment, that makes us successful. So we know it is critical to invest in our people, to invest in our workforce, and make sure it's a happy, healthy, and diverse workforce. And also providing our employees with the skills, tools, education, and knowledge so they can deliver to our workforce. And what I want to focus on today is really talk about one of those things that Finning invests in, that makes us a healthy workforce. But before I did that, because we're talking about the UN SDGs, I wanted to provide you with an overview of Finning and how we contribute to the UN SDGs. So Finning sees ourselves contributing to all of the sustainable goals in one way, shape, or form. However, what I've done in this slide is just kind of outlined what are some of the critical or key areas where we support the UN SDGs, and just provide a kind of a quick overview of what we're doing to support them. So maintaining a safe and inclusive workforce. At Finning, safety is the top priority of our company. We invest in a strong safety culture, in injury prevention, as well as building a safe and psychologically safe and inclusive workforce where everybody can come to work and show up just as their most authentic selves. So that's UN SDG 8 and 5. And then also around partnerships and quality education. So we invest heavily in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, through both practical ways and through financial ways. And we do this through partnerships in each of the regions where we operate. We also provide skills development through scholarships, through apprenticeships, through different forms of education, through undeserved or underrepresented groups in the regions where we operate, as well as investing in our own workforce as well. And then UN SDG 13, so climate action, and this is actually the area that I'm responsible for within Finning. So in Finning, we have an internal target around GHG emissions reductions, and in each of the regions that we operate in, we have programs and we have capital projects in place, like LED lights, that sort of thing, to ensure we are reducing our emissions year over year. And in fact, since we started this program in 2017, we have been successful in absolutely continuing to reduce our emissions. Also interesting, I think, the UN SDG 12 around responsible consumption and development. We support a circular economy within Finning, and we do that, of course, in our own within our own branches. We have recycling programs, but also we have two interesting programs. One is our exchange program, where we extend the life of components in machinery, and we partner with CAT to offer that program, so it extends the use of components as long as they possibly can. And then also we have a massive remanufacturing facility in Edmonton. And with that program, we will take in equipment that comes, it's to the end of its natural life, and we will completely rehaul that equipment and put it back out into the market at a far reduced price. So again, extending the life of equipment as long as we possibly can. And then partnerships with our customers. So it is critical to our customers. Some of you may be our customers. They're coming to us and Caterpillar and asking us, what are we doing to provide sustainable, more environmentally responsible products to them? So I'm just going to talk a little bit in general about what we're doing in this area. So we're doing a number of things. We provide equipment, electric equipment, as well as hybrid equipment. We're piloting big, huge electric dozers in the oil sands right now. We are also providing power solutions to our customers as well. So we provide combined heat and power generators. We provide microgrids for solar energy, as well as biogas. And we're looking at ways to substitute natural gas for diesel as well. So we're doing lots in that area. as well as providing technology and digital solutions. So we've recently released technology that allows our customer to track their emissions in their operation. They can track their down or idle time, as well as tracking their fleet efficiency. So how can they operate more efficiently and reduce impacts as well? Was there anything else you wanted to say on that? No, I think that's those are kind of the main things we're doing in partnership with our customers. But the reason, or the thing I really want to focus on today, and what makes me the most proud to work for a company like Finning, and this isn't an area I'm responsible for, but I really wanted to talk about it again because it's a reason, it's something that I think is really awesome about Finning, and it's a reason why I stay there as well. So is related to our inclusion and diversity strategy and the work we do to support the UN SDG 5 on gender equity. So before I talk about why this is important to our organization, I want to talk about why this is a really important thing to me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and why gender equity is important for me. So I grew up in Newfoundland, just like any other little boy in Newfoundland. I am not a boy, but I was the biggest tomboy you would have ever met. So this is me in trunks on the beach, which I probably did up until I was about 10 years old. I also played I was the only girl in all boys baseball league for a number of years throughout my youth. And I also played in an all-boys hockey league. I was the only girl at this time. There's no girls playing hockey in Newfoundland at the time. So this is me, the goalie here. And I played at a very high level at hockey in Newfoundland. Was the only girl on the midget, played up to midget AAA level with guys. So, and then the one other thing, and I had millions of these examples that I could go through, but this is me in grade 2, and in grade 2, I went to a school where all the boys wore pants and then all the girls wore tunics. That did not sit very well with me. So I drafted a 3-page letter in grade 2 to our principal, telling him that I just did not think it was fair that boys could wear pants and that girls had to wear tunics, and that girls didn't have an option to wear pants. I just did not think that was fair or equitable, and I wanted change. Now, it wasn't that year that it ended up changing, but it wasn't that much longer after that girls were in fact allowed to wear pants to school. Anyways, like I said, I have a million examples of that. Fortunately for me, I was always made to believe that I could do anything that my little guy friends could do, and I think it, and my parents completely supported that, and I was allowed to be exactly who I wanted to be, and I wasn't made to fit in any other sort of mold, any little girl kind of sort of mold at that time. So fortunately, I think that ended up making me into a strong woman, both physically and mentally. This is a picture of me. Can't really see it that well, but I fought on the national boxing team for 4 years. I was Canadian champion and fought all over the world, representing my country, and it was a big part of my life for a very long time. After I hung up the gloves, I partnered with the Boys and Girls Club, and I developed a program with them, and it was really focused on empowering youth from girls and young women across Calgary, and giving them, not only teaching the fundamentals of boxing, but also kind of empowering them. And we developed curriculum as well to just empower them as women, self-respect and those types of things. So I ran that program in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club for 4 years. And now, my latest passion is mountain biking. I mountain bike a ton, and I now coach for a women's organization. And my passion is obviously developing that stoke amongst women and providing them with an environment where they can become their best people, and giving them tools to do things that they never thought they would have been able to do. So, tying that back to fitting, so for me, I feel very, very fortunate getting those fundamental values of equality and being a girl, be able to do anything that a guy can do, and I think that it made me who I am today. So I'm super proud of that. And when it comes time to talk about the company and who you work for, I am super proud of working for Fitting because they've also invested very heavily in inclusion and diversity and equality within our organization. So I want to tell you a little bit about what that journey looks like. And I'm going to start with a video from our CEO talking about that commitment.
Inclusion and diversity, in my mind, are concepts that go hand in hand. On the diversity front, it's all about better decision making. And I think if you have diverse views, diversity of thought, as you make decisions, you make better decisions. From an inclusion perspective, making sure people feel welcome, feel part of the family, allows you to get the best out of folks. And allows you to have people that are most engaged in what they're doing, which as a result leads to better business performance. I think everyone agrees that talent and that war for talent and capabilities is going to be the competitive differentiator for us. And we're not going to be able to attract or retain or develop our talent unless we foster an inclusive workplace and we have diversity of thought as we make decisions. We've approached it just like any other business issue. We've engaged with the board. We've set a 5-year strategic roadmap. We've put KPIs against it. We've ensured that we've resourced it effectively. And we've made it part of people's leadership objectives. And I think that's really key. If you don't resource something, if you don't have a 5-year plan on where you're trying to head, the likelihood of getting there is difficult. And we're not going to get there if we don't tap into a larger pool of talent than what we've historically focused on. And so the combination of building and developing a talented, capable organization, as well as the benefits of diversity of thought, have led me to having this as one of our top priorities in the company. I think I've seen too many highly capable, very talented people leave prior organizations and this organization because we didn't have as inclusive environment as we should. And in a world where talent is everything, we can't afford to lose talented people. That is why this has got to be the highest priority that a company can have, because we're totally dependent on talent to drive this company forward. In order to create an environment where you can really benefit from diversity of thought, you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to debate. You have to be able to accept constructive feedback, and sometimes that's not always easy. And frankly, it makes for a longer decision-making process. But I do believe if you can create that environment where everyone can give their all without fear of reprisals, you ultimately end up with a better decision. This journey is not just about the CEOs or the EVPs or the VPs. Every employee in the company has a role to play. And my encouragement to everybody is to make sure, as you engage with your leaders, as you engage with your employees, create an environment where diverse views are encouraged and accepted. And if you can do that, I assure you, it'll be a little harder, but you'll come up with better decisions and ultimately be more successful.
So there you go. That's Scott Thompson, and he is our CEO, and he really lives and breathes this, and this is something that we hear about all the time, and everybody in the company knows that this is a priority. So it's really neat to be at a company where this is such an important thing. So Scott talked about this, so I'm not going to belabor it too much, but we do have a strategy in place. It started with really the origin started with developing I&D councils within each of our regions, as well as a global committee. And then we really worked on the foundation. So that was the development of that 5-year strategy, and then resourcing that strategy as well. And then we went into awareness, so a lot of education, a lot of training in this topic. And now we're in talent integration, where we're embedding inclusion into our workforce through our processes and our people. So in recruitment and hiring, we have targets in place. We're providing training to our leaders, as well as all of our workforce. And then it's all about integration, and then making this as a market differentiator for our organization. So I thought I'd talk, and I'm almost done, but just a little bit about what we've done in 2019, some of the key activities in where we are in our journey, which is the talent integration point. So building the culture of inclusion and respect. So some of the things we've done around the leadership accountabilities. With our executive committee, they have monthly meetings, and in their meetings they have a standing agenda item around I&D in those meetings. What else have we done with those guys? Each of their goals, in each of their performance plans, they have goals around I&D. It could be around intention or retention or training, and that sort of thing. And that's, of course, cascaded down throughout our organization. All of our leaders took a training called Conscious Inclusion, which was very interesting. So a lot of that training was around the innate bias we have in decision making. So we learned a lot in those trainings about how we had to be aware that we need to purposefully include people and make them feel included in our teams. And then respect as a foundation for inclusion. Everybody in our organization in 2019 took a training called Standing Up for Respect, and it was on, what was it on? Yeah, anti-harassment training, Standing Up for Respect. And then there was one other thing. We also did a leadership training for building respectful teams. So it was the same thing, looking at bullying in the workforce, ensuring we have tools and resources to provide an inclusive type of environment. And then removing barriers. So two of the things, or a couple of the things we did, was looking at improving female retention. So we did a very deep dive of internal research as to why are our leaders, our female leaders and female workforce, leaving the organization. So some findings came out of that, and they will be actioned and in our leaders' plans in 2020 to close those gaps. And we also did an interesting project whereby not all facilities now, but many of our facilities were audited, and looking at opportunities. We looked at things like, were there enough female bathrooms? Was there appropriate PPE for females and that sort of thing? So same thing across our globe. We did those audits. So again, we have to. There's baby steps, but we do have plans next year to upgrade some of our facilities as well. And then many activities went on within each of our regions around the LGBTQ2S community. So actively involved there as well. And then just to kind of hit home the support that we're doing in UN SDG 5 gender equity. So some of the things that we're doing that directly supports those. We are a member of the 30% Club. So that club is an organization that has mandated, or a pledge that mandated to have 30% of your board as females. So in 2018, I believe we hit that target. We now have 33% board representation. We are a member of Catalyst. Catalyst are a global organization that promotes inclusion in the workforce, as well as in Actua in Canada. Don't know how to pronounce this. This is in Chile, but they're both partners that we work with to support STEM activities, and we specifically look at targeting females within those partnerships as well. And then this year, we were recognized by Equileap, and their organization that collects research and data on gender equity. And we were listed as in the top 10 within Canada on this list, and we were the only corporation that that made that list from the industrial sector. So we're very proud of that accomplishment too. And we're continuing to grow and develop, obviously, this journey. But I think we've done a lot. It's something that's very important within our company, and it's going to be critical to our success. So that is my story, as well as Finning's story around UN SDG 6 and why it's so important to both Finning and myself.